Hello, dwellers, and welcome to the basement. Obviously, we're doing a little recap, a little review of tonight's episode of Sherlock. Before we jump into it, there will be spoilers. I apologize in advance. If you do not want spoilers, click off this video right now, watch the episode, the six Thatchers, and then come back into this way we can talk about it a little bit. So that said, obviously the episode titled "The Six Thatchers." It's episode 1 of season 4 or series 4, depending on your preferred vernacular. And the obvious thing, first question is: was this a good episode or was this a bad episode? And for me, it was very damn good, very, very, very good. This was when you add everything as it relates to Sherlock, going back to the first episode of the series several years ago, when Watson meets Sherlock, and knowing that Watson's coming off of, his tour of duty in Afghanistan, has the phantom pains, and you see his life getting better, and you obviously have the obvious complication of being a friend of Sherlock Holmes. But over the course of the past three seasons, and of course the I forget the name. It will be considered the one-off special that kind of took it back to the Victorian era Sherlock Holmes. I'm not sure if that's the right term, and I forget the name of it off the top of my head. But you basically have seen John Watson's life improve and get better to the point where he meets a great girl. He meets Mary. He marries Mary. They have a child together. Everything is going perfectly for John Watson. And so eventually, particularly with an ongoing series, and knowing how Stephen Moffat does things, tragedy was eventually going to come around to him, and this episode was that particular tipping point, where Mary's unfortunately passed, ends up coming back to it comes back around on her, but not in a way that one would expect. No. Uh, but before we talk about that, let's talk about the obvious thing here, that Mary is killed, and in a way, it is Sherlock's fault. Uh, and but this has an interesting, obvious effect that it's kind of want to push towards actually humanizing Sherlock in a way. And we instantly saw that with the fallout at the very end of the episode. Sherlock actually going to a freaking therapist or a psychiatrist or what have you, because he genuinely feels horrible that it's actually his arrogance, his cockiness, that kind of led to what happened. So, and it was so perfectly done and built to over the course of several years worth of episodes, and uh, I really appreciate the long term storytelling there. Now let's talk about the some things about the episode itself. Now let's talk about Mary. Mary, obviously, we knew when she was introduced that she did some things. She certainly had some skills and so forth, being a secret agent. And this episode really went out to fill in a lot of those gaps about her. She was part of an elite team that was betrayed, uh, and and the past has its way of catching up with you. In this case, it was basically a total misunderstanding when one of Mary's ex teammates comes looking for her, thinking that she betrayed him and the rest uh, of their unit. But then it turns out to be basically Miss Moneypenny. I'm sorry, Mrs. Norbury, if and I should have written the name down. Basically, being the one the clever one, the one who says like, I could do all this, I'm better than these people, and basically getting people killed because of her own jealousy and spite, and that revelation over the course of the entire episode is really that's really well handled too. And this sweet apparent little secretary, note taker, what have you, basically the equivalent of Miss Moneypenny from the James Bond films. Miss Moneypenny has had enough and decides to take out M. There you go. Again, not the best comparison, but yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was watching this, and seeing that in its own way was a nice bit of irony there. But the fact that she is introduced, sitting off to the side at the beginning of the episode, Sherlock and Mycroft are being briefed by Lady Smallwood and what was it, the other guy, and his name is totally escapes me. It's kind of like a briefing regarding the fallout of when at the end of the third series. It's like Sherlock says, I'm a high functioning sociopath and blah blah blah. Uh, and Sherlock zeroing in on her because she instantly recognizing she is quite clever, and you wouldn't think about her at all. But again, with how things build up and play out over the course of this episode, it makes perfect sense. And I do appreciate things like the subtle details of introducing the real mastermind early in such a nonchalant way that it won't have you think about them. And that's again great use of storytelling there. When it's done well, it's done exceptionally. As it's well here, it's very awesome because it makes you think. I also like the initial opening mystery with the kid who calls his father, and he wanted to surprise him for his 50th birthday, and the tragedy of his prank not going the way that he. I don't want to say prank, but his intended surprise, resulting in unintentional tragedy, and then it basically being the lead in for Sherlock to go onto the case regarding the Margaret Thatcher bust being smashed periodically throughout the course of the episode. It was a tragic way there, and you can actually see with that, with how Sherlock actually handled that, and upon realize as he figured that out, and even though he's focusing on this bust that was missing, the, that he was still working on this case of this uh, a kid who was found in a car that exploded, but he was basically dead a week prior. And Sherlock's mind is still working on basically perfectly dividing his attention in his own way, even though he's focusing on one thing, but then realize, but his handling and breaking the news to this kid's parents is again very humanizing. Is much more human than how we would have seen Sherlock handle this in previous seasons, in episodes, in my opinion. But at the same time, he's still Sherlock, or at least he was up until the very end of the episode. Actually, texting during the christening of John and Mary's baby, which texting, tweeting, and so forth, with I thought was quite was quite funny in my point of view. So yeah, there was a lot of great things in this episode that really played out well, in my opinion. So on that note, and I know I was kind of all over the place with this, but that's the thing when you watch something that airing live, and then you jumping on to record something immediately thereafter and just shooting from the hip. you kind of get to be all over the place, but that's kind of what I do here in the basement, particularly with TV shows. So, that said, what's coming up here in the basement? Well, I intend to actually, after I get started on another little side project, I'm going to jump back on Twitch later tonight, possibly after, to do another live stream to make up for the poor quality one that earlier with all the issues I had trying to play Saints Row 3. It started off great, but then the quality went to proverbial shite. So we'll return to what I know actually works and streams well with Star Trek Online. And on that note, my friends, and you are my friends, we'll catch you later. So long, folks.